Monday. RawMikeRichards.com, broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East, out of the Pacific Junction Hotel. Oh, we got a beauty today, and I mean seriously, a real beaut. Dennis Marouk is going to be in all hour, and he's brought gifts, and you won't believe it. It's all Washington Capitals stuff. And one Golden Seals hat. A Golden Seals hat, which I don't think I've ever seen. Also, we're going to talk about LeBron. Oh, you may hate him. I'm sure in Boston he's not popular. Are you kidding me? Never came off the floor. 48 minutes. Ty Lue said that of his career, and he's had some incredible moments. This might be maybe the most amazing. And again, for a visiting team to win in the NBA? What? Glad I didn't put money on that. Also, we'll take a look at some of the other NBA just sort of moments. Remember Rick Barry? Golden State? Underhanded? Also, we will have a look back at Ovi's draft in 2004. And Dan Patrick talks with Johnny Manziel as the coverage of CFL continues south of the border. To me, I've never really seen anything like it. And regardless of those that came up previous that had attention, I think the Rocket Ishmael would certainly be in that category in terms of its largeness and in scale of what Americans are excited about. But I've not seen anything like this. I hope it works. I think there's a chance. So far, he's looked okay. But, Dave, as you know, it's camp. You know, there's been some controlled scrimmage. Really hard to get a feel on exactly what that is.
Yep, nothing. There was a game yesterday, by the way. Eskimos beating the Rough Riders.
There's a preseason game already.
Anytime you beat the Rough Riders, it's a good thing.
Yeah, there'll be some buys, by the way, and I think Dennis will be very happy. We'll get to him. You know what? Let's just throw Dennis on, all right, so people realize, what is it, Ed McMahon in the room? Why is there no one really seeing him? Dennis, thanks so much for coming down, buddy.
My pleasure.
I know your schedule's busy. You got all kinds of
golf tournaments.
Yeah, I was going to say golfing.
No, the guy's a world traveler.
Yeah.
Never mind golf.
Yeah.
This guy won't sit still.
It's a good life. Oh, so quickly, let's get to the Celtics and the Cavs last night, property of the National Basketball Association. So I think, Russell, when I'm looking at this, is it just a little over 5 minutes? 5:50, and Boston is up by 1. 5:50, they're up by 1. A couple of real heartbreak smart plays by the Cavs. Great vision by LeBron James, who, by the way, as I said, 48 minutes, never comes off the floor. What can you say about this guy? The haters have to admit this is really one of the great all-time performances. Once again, property of the NBA and the NBA broadband properties.
To the paint, but how about Jason Tatum? Jeff Green tries a three-pointer and answers. Jeff Green.
Come in our shooters and take your chances.
James slips a pass. Tristan Thompson for the open dunk. Eighth back in the corner. Sets the three-pointer. Misses. Rebound.
Here's the killer.
Jeff Green.
LeBron.
George Hill releases down the other end. Drives. Layup. He banks it in. A 7-point Cavs lead with 1:16 remaining. Timeout Boston.
Then it balloons to 7.
Steps back. Fires a three. Shot short. Rebound tipped and taken by James. Here comes James in the open floor. James, grab from behind. Count it. Goaltend and one. Celtic fans' favorite teams. They love this team. But they were beaten by a great player as Morris throws it down with 32.
Deserves a lot of credit.
And how ironic. Where defense they've struggled all season as Jaylen Brown hits that three.
They're going to rue this performance today.
This is a remarkable performance. Remarkable. And the Cavs go to the finals again.
Final seconds tick off. It's over. Cleveland wins Game 7. LeBron James and the Cavs do it again.
Once again, property of the NBA, but that is just, it's funny, Dennis, you said Ovi, maybe, with the size and what he does, but I just, it's hard to make comparisons to players that are of that kind of dominance. Yeah. And I'm just curious. So, you saw a lot of players. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's exactly, in basketball, sometimes those kinds of comparisons. But who was the dominant, you think, for you in your time where, depending, and it might be more than one guy, but the guy that's on the other side of the ice for you as a player, you're like, Oh, Christ, here.
I got
Here
one.
we go
I
again.
got one in mind
Okay.
in your era. So you
All right.
tell me who it
Who-
is.
who
I
was
got
it?
I got it written down.
Okay.
Well, I'd have to say like Brian Trache, my area, or Wayne Gretzky, of course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those are the two guys.
What about the bully on the ice that could still score and still hit and still fight, but he'll put up like 100-point season?
100 points? Who would that be?
See, now it's a
a good question.
He's
Now
going,
have to
I didn't
think,
come here for trivia, guys.
That was a target. Yeah.
Mark Messier.
Oh, well, Mark Messier. Yeah,
I
he was
thought-
the other center. Yeah, he was kind of the guy that he did it all. Those two, as I said earlier on the time of the show, was Brian Trache.
Yeah.
Mark Messier, the two tough guys. I was a centerman, so I got to play against
Correct.
them a lot. And during their careers, they were just unbelievable players. Yeah, dominating. Yeah.
And Trache, it's funny you say Trache. We've talked to him many times. You guys are very similar in stature as well, and you guys both had that bulldog mentality. So head to head in that Patrick division when you were at the
right.
Caps,
Caps,
that
yeah.
was you saw a lot of Brian
Yeah.
Trache.
Yeah, he's won everything except a Grammy award. So.
Yeah,
Not a bad hockey
There's
player.
still
No,
some time. There's
He
still
might
some
get
time.
he might get that while he's playing his guitar and singing, making some songs, you know. But no, he was just a great competitor. I mean, on and off the ice.
Talking about dominant players, so I thought, what is that equivalent? And for I guess depending on your age, Pistol Pete Maravich. If you've never seen the highlights, and Dave, this is certainly before your time, but do you know what I'm talking about when I say Pistol Pete Maravich?
I know the name. Yeah, don't know the how
story,
good
right?
of a player he was. Yeah.
Okay, he's a freak. I'm going to show you clips of what dominance looks like because again, watching LeBron James, I thought, he died early. He died at 40. But he was almost a savant. The things that Pete Maravich did, so he came out of LSU where he was considered to be maybe the greatest basketball player that they'd ever seen. He goes to the NBA, gets actually drafted by the Atlanta Hawks, but a lot of people remember Utah Jazz, for instance. But what he did, and it's funny, the comments that I see about this particular performance, to a man is almost the same thing. What they say is he was way ahead of his time. Some of the moves that he did, they do now, but no one else did back then. He really was an innovator. He is almost Globetrotter-like. Without being flashy, he just knew how to do it. This is the oohs and ahs kind of tape when you play this thing because this is Pistol Pete Maravich, and if you want to talk about a magician or one of the first of his kind, maybe the only kind, one of the best basketball players who ever played the game. Look at that pass. Ridiculous. By the way, that was to himself that he did off the backboard there. I mean, you talk about breaking ankles. This was a guy that just people couldn't understand how he did what he did. Again, just the sort of IQ, I would say, that goes along with a freak athletic ability to get that ball in the net. But of course, it's also the passing too. I mean, we talked about Steve Nash. I mean, just look at some of the passing out here.
He's done.
And so there's just a look at. I just want to throw that in terms of his dominance. Pistol Pete Maravich was unbelievable.
Michael Jordan.
Well,
Come on, that's a dominating player.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, Magic Johnson.
But Magic Johnson,
you go through all those guys, and those are the guys that just go out and star, and they just make plays. And you go, wow.
Like, see,
wow.
that's why LeBron
Right.
James, people, Dave, as you know,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't want to give it up for him. Like, because there's sometimes there's a pushback from certain fans or whatever. But who has done what LeBron has done I said, aside from Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's done what LeBron has done.
No, when everything's said and done, and even now as we're watching him basically still in his prime, which is a gift in itself, we're looking at either the first or second best player in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking
And if they don't want to admit that, that's where they get that weird immaturity.
Yeah.
Like some people get weird. I hate him.
Yeah.
Why did he rob your house? Why are you so mad? You know, it's like when Bobby Orr played. It was like, I hate Bobby Orr. Well, if you're a Leaf fan, because he just trashed you, he just killed you. I get that.
I've never heard anybody say they hate Bobby Orr.
Oh.
Yeah, not too many, no.
I would.
There might be a few guys playing against them
Yeah,
during
I'm
that
gonna
time, yeah, but no, yeah.
It's like hating Wayne Gretzky, and I get it. You win those Stanley Cups, and it literally must have felt like you were. Well, did it feel like that when you're watching Pistol Pete Maravich? You just didn't really understand because he was doing things that people didn't do. Wayne did stuff that people didn't do.
We call that read and react. You know, basically, that's where they're so far ahead. Their eyes and the brain, their players are so far ahead of what's going on at that present time, and then because it happens. That play what they were thinking of doing, that pass or that shot, whatever, and then all of a sudden it happens. You know, and people go, "Wow, what was that?" You know?
Well, let me
wait a minute here.
Let me show you another player who happened in this particular game. He got a game. Was it 48, 49, and 50?
I think so.
It was the last game of that season, and it's against Detroit. And there was a very happy number 21 out there. So we're going back. Let me see. This would have been This is 1981. 1981. And let's look at another magic man named Dennis Marouk.
Wound up for a wicked shot when it was right on, and Lazinski had no trouble with that. Puck held in by Walker. In behind the goal, Kelly into the corner with it. Bob Kelly centered it, and they score. Marouk all alone has his 50th goal.
Perfect pass by Kelly on the corner, right out through the goal crease, and Marouk was right there. And they're paying him quite a
So when you're watching this, does it seem like yesterday for you? Is this?
Yeah, time flies fast, man. Yeah,
but
I remember. I don't remember a lot of goals and that. Certain ones, when you see that, I go, yeah, it was just like the other day.
Yeah.
You know, I remember playing with that man. I remember that pass. I remember I was open and it went in, and it's like, wait a minute here. What year was that?
Well,
So who were your line mates at the time? Was that Gardner?
There's a good no.
Well,
the fellow
Ryan Walter.
No, Bob the Hound Kelly.
Okay.
That came in from Philly. That was a trade.
Yeah.
And Jean Pronovo.
Really?
From Pittsburgh. He came in, and I was a younger center.
Yeah.
They were two older wingers. Yeah. And then the next year when I got 60 was Ryan Walter.
Yeah.
And Chris Valentine.
Yeah, because you look at that roster: Mike Gardner, Ryan Walter, Bob Kelly, as you mentioned, who scored 62 points, 26 goals that season.
That was his best year ever.
A young Bent Gustafson was also entering the league at the time. So I mean, on the point, Darren Veach and Rick Green, guys like that. Wow, that's that's something. I didn't know you were with Kelly.
That whole changed after when they made that big trade.
That's right.
Rick
with
Green,
the Montreal Canadiens.
with Montreal Canadiens, and then that changed the whole outlook of the Washington Capitals. And then they made the draft pick.
That's right.
Well, Lazinski in goal. We talked about who people say they hate. I bet he hates Dennis Marouk. He goes, I remember that game. Yeah, did you? Because was there a little red light burn on the back of your head with Marouk coming in on you?
It's funny though. In that Red Wings team, just a couple years later, they draft Steve Yzerman. And all of a sudden, the Red Wings start to become a little bit better, and you see them a lot in the Norris division as you move on to Minnesota North Stars.
Right. They were when they got starts at your draft picks early. And that prime example, you look at Washington when they ended up drafting Novi in 2005 or whatever it was.
Yep.
But and it really does. You can start getting some good players. You build with them. Build with them, and then you get another guy here, another guy moves in, you sign a guy, and I think what happened to Detroit, they were down for many years.
Yes.
They weren't a real strong hockey team, and then they got better as they drafted better players and traded better players.
Yeah, because off that roster, the most notable, because every single year you'd have that one All-Star go into the game, it was John O'Grodnick, wasn't it?
Big Johnny.
Yeah, number 25.
Up and down the wing, slap shot.
Absolutely.
Let him sleep.
Let him sleep, exactly.
Don't wake him up.
Yeah.
Those guys you don't wake up. All right.
That's right.
That's what he was, up and down winger. Yeah.
Well, here we are with the Caps doing it in a very different way than all those years where the President Trophy winners and they got all this stuff. And I guess we'll go back to a conversation if we look at 2004, the pick of the Washington Capitals, a very young Alexander Ovechkin. You kind of forget what guys. I mean, look, it's not like he looks a lot different, but just that version.
And you'll recognize the general manager that calls him too.
Yep.
Well,
that's right.
Let's have a look right here, going back to 2004.
With the first selection in 2004 NHL entry draft, the Washington Capitals are pleased to select Alexander Ovechkin.
Not like there was ever any doubt.
Ovechkin's dad's huge.
A great big smile.
Ovechkin's big, and his dad dwarfs him. Big Russian guy.
Michael, his mother Tatiana, Alexander Ovechkin. Not only is this guy a winning hockey player, he's got a winning personality, and that's one of the things that the Washington Capitals really like about him. Every day goes by, his English is getting better and better. You almost never see him without a big smile on his face. He's got tons of personality on and off the ice. And I don't think there's anybody sitting in this arena today, not at any of the 30 draft tables, that wouldn't do exactly the same thing that the Washington Capitals are doing right here. This kid, 18 years old, is going to be on the Russian World Cup team this fall, and he says he's looking forward to it. And he was joking with his agent on me and suggesting, I think somebody might score a goal in overtime, and it might be me. The thing that amazes me about this player, he has tremendous escapability down low with the puck on his stick. He's got explosive speed through the neutral zone. He's fundamentally so sound defensively, Brian, that a lot of young players that have the offensive talent he has don't have that defensive awareness. So you know he's going to be a bang-up number one and really lead Washington to the promised land. That's right.
There you go, back into 2004, and since that, I guess they've never looked back. But he was I would say a highlight reel those first couple of years. What he would do, and
his entire career.
Yeah. The one thing that I remember, like the players talking about him, and so when I got a chance to out in Calgary, for instance, to talk to some of the guys, I said, "So what is the thing about Ovechkin that you would say, I don't know, surprised you, but what is the thing that sticks with you?" He said, "He'd shoot from anywhere." Like he'd sit there and you'd think he was going to pass or dump it, and all of a sudden there'd be a shot on goal. He would shoot from anywhere.
Powerful shot, and a goal scorer is nowhere to go. He knows the ice. He knows where he is, on the ice, and where the net is, and I think he's got a great release, and he's just a powerful guy. But if you want to talk about the two teams that coming in, that as you said about McPhee being the announcing of Ovi, he's the GM in Vegas, and who's the GM of Washington? Brian McClellan. They both played in Guelph Storm. They both went to college the same place, and here they are in the Stanley Cup final, both in GMs. So it's kind of a unique story with the GMs.
Yeah, and McPhee has his fingerprints on both franchises. Yeah. The Stars were drafted by McPhee on the Capitals side, and well, he built Vegas. So
there you go.
I wanted to ask you. Okay, Mike was talking about the OV release and how he'd shoot from anywhere. I know it's two completely different players, but how Mike Bossy-ish is Alex Ovechkin, or is there a comparison between the two? Because I'm guessing Bossy was the sniper of the '80s. I think there's some argument there, but I think, in my opinion, he is.
Brett Hall,
Brett Hall,
but I would say,
what would you compare him to then?
I think the edge, the Ovi, because of his physical part of the game,
size,
size and strength and power. He's more like LeBron James. That's kind of in basketball I look at it. Yeah. And where Bossy was a sniper in the slot, getting certain areas, and Gillies and Trottier would set him up, but he wasn't a big hitter.
Right.
He didn't do a lot of that. He was more of a guy getting a shot, getting an area and shooting where it's. But he was good.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Quick release.
Sure.
I mean, that's where you look at all the goal scorers: Stamkos, Ovechkin, Bossy, Brett Hall, myself. No, we always had
60.
Quick.
Nobody scored 60 this year.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm in that nice group. But it was all. If you look at them all, it's all quick releases.
Yeah.
Any of them, like Lanny McDonald, you go down all the 60 goal scorers that have scored, we all had a quick release, and we weren't powerful, but we got the puck off before the goalies reacted, and that's what it was, where we look at certain areas to shoot at, and the goalie didn't expect us to shoot there.
How much of that is God-given to you, or is that something you had to work on religiously?
I think it started when I was 8 years old, shooting pucks in a snowbank on our street where I grew up.
Yeah.
And it just became, we played street hockey, and I was scoring goals in street hockey, and went to house league and was the leading scorer in house league.
Yeah.
And I just kept going.
How many goals did you get? How many goals did you get in house league? Was I remember one year I got 370 goals.
No, I don't remember. No, but that's where that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah.
Well, talking about Ovechkin and it's interesting. Bob McKenzie, who was talking about his personality and that he's always sort of an upbeat or whatever kind of guy, and he certainly is for those of us who grew up where Russians were robotic and didn't do anything.
Right.
He's the opposite of that. But also there's the always this inference that perhaps that he plays dirty, that he is a dirty player. And I guess the way I look at it is, well, then are we going to start looking at how Gordie Howe played? Or are you going to start looking at Mark Messier? Are you going to start looking at these guys who did all that kind of stuff? I think if you're an aggressive player, I mean, I guess maybe there's some that people are not going to be pleased with the way he took somebody out, but I don't think necessarily is he a dirty player.
No, he's not a dirty player at all. I mean, he's just powerful, and he likes to hit. I don't think he hits as much as he used to, due to the fact of the rules and all that they've changed in that. But he's just one of those guys that you got to watch out for. You know what I mean? Because you don't think he's going to hit, and all of a sudden, boom, your body's not ready for it, and you're going to get hurt. Because maybe that's the way. Maybe they think that maybe he's that type of player because he hurts guys because of his strength, and they don't expect him to hit, and all of a sudden, boom. Because he's coming, he's strong, he's powerful, and he's flying right in there. So, I think that I don't think he's a dirty player at all. No, I believe he's just he likes to hit. He really does.
How physical do you think this final is? Do you think it's a physical final? Does someone have an advantage in terms of the physicality?
The Washington Capitals have the advantage because of Tom Wilson.
But not just Wilson
but he's the main.
He's the main guy, but all those guys, like even Oshie has picked up his game.
Sure.
Pelly, Connolly, all these guys. And if you ask Gretzky at the time that they won the Stanley Cups, it was those third and fourth line guys were extremely important in their team to help them win the Stanley Cup. If those guys don't go, then you're going to lead on Ovechkin or Knutsev to score goals, and they may be checked and not have that opportunity. Sure. So the other guys have to kind of produce. But I think Washington has the maturity team, of course. Mm-hmm. I think they have the strength. What Vegas has speed, and both goalies are hot. Both goalies are hot right now, and we'll just see who shines.
Yeah, and you add to it like a Lars Eller. We didn't see this kind of Lars Eller in Montreal.
Exactly.
We're seeing it with the Washington Capitals. I mean, I love the depth of it. I think the Washington Capitals are the bigger, stronger team. The only thing, as you mentioned, they got to keep up speed-wise because I think both goaltenders have played very, very well. I give the edge to the Washington Capitals in this series. I think the Washington Capitals are going to win this series, but I'm curious to see what those first two games look like in Vegas. Vegas has been off for another week, which is a long time at this time of the season. So we'll see. Well, Marc-Andre Fleury has to continue to be as well as he was.
Yeah. He's playing great. I mean, what is his record? 12-3, and then I think Hope he's 12-5. But they're both similar, and Hope he's had 2 shutouts.
Yes.
He's coming. He's riding high.
And they've
with
been
the 2
outshot,
shutouts.
but I think 5 games they've been outshot every single game.
Right, and Washington's got they almost got score 4 goals a game, so that's pretty good. Whereas Vegas don't have the big goal scores.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
2-3 goals, and they won. They beat San Jose. They beat Winnipeg by their speed and their
Very much so.
goaltending. That's the only thing, speed and goaltending. They only got a couple goals.
Usually, if I see a Barry Trotz at this time of year, or almost any time, I always give the nod to Barry Trotz, perhaps being the better of the coaches. But for what has happened this year, I don't think in this series, I don't think you can say that.
No, both coaches have done a great job. There's no doubt about it. I think you put Gallant into if they've got a different coach, Gallant wasn't in there, or like I don't want to say Torch or other coaches that are not player coaches.
Right.
Makes a big difference. I don't think Vegas would have been in the finals. Wouldn't have been this far. Gallant is a player's coach, and I think that's what he just let the guys go play. Now you make your own name. You make your own name.
What's
that's
funny?
What they've done. That's what they've done.
Yeah, and it's funny watching them because the guy doesn't match lines.
No.
It's just like, who's next?
Yeah,
and
just rolls them, man.
Yeah, it really does. Because watching that entire Jet series, it was like, okay, the William Karlsson lines against the Scheifele line, and next shift he's up against the whatever line was. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And when you can do that, and then you look at their back end too, like a guy like Nate Schmidt, who was a former Washington Capital. Where the hell is this guy come out of? Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously George
you go down
McBean
the
knew
list.
He was, but
you go down the list. They knew they were looking for speed. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And James Karlsson, look at him, 43 goals.
Yeah, and
nobody wanted him.
Yeah, and this is a player that the Blue Jackets at the time of the draft said, don't take Josh Anderson. we'll give you a draft pick and you can take William Karlsson. I'm like, okay, we'll sign up on that.
There you go.
So
it almost seems bizarre in that going back to the Columbus series, that Grubauer gets the first 2 starts,
Right.
and Dave and I were both sort of like-minded, thinking that maybe Washington doesn't get out of the first round. But once Holtby got back in there, and there's no question, when he's at the top of his game, I put him in the top 5 in the NHL. I do.
Yeah, I was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, doing an event, and Brent Johnson, who played for the Capitals,
that's right,
and works for them, and he goes, they're going to go with Grubauer, and I said, well, what do you mean? He's had the, you got a $6 million guy, whatever, $7 million sitting on the bench. He's your number 1 guy, has been. Yeah, so he had a rough 2-3 weeks, but it's a whole new season in the playoffs. Once it goes, you got to play your best. He said, well, Grubauer's been on a roll, and they're going to play him. I said, you're making a mistake. They're making a mistake. They should start Holtby, and guess what? I was right.
Yep.
They're right. They put him in after the first game, second game.
And everything was okay.
So look at him now.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, at this time of year. Usually I have a pretty good feel for what those home crowds are like and what the hockey fan in that city is like. But I don't in Washington. I don't really have a feel for it. What is, because I know most Capital fans that I know up here, and a lot of them who are still in the Blade Tape Mike Richards extravaganza, like Chris from the Tokes, who's just a Capitals fan. But generally, if it's going to be playoffs and a Game 7, they're in the fetal position. They rather would not hear about it. But they've beat that dragon. So now here you are in the Stanley Cup Finals. To you, what was a Cap fan like? What is it? Because if you say Winnipeg or Toronto or any other, I got to feel Montreal, Boston, Philadelphia. I know what that fan is like. I don't have a feel for a Caps fan because I, obviously never been to DC, never been around Washington hockey fans. What are they like?
Well, I was there when we had the Save the Caps campaign. They were going to fold.
That's right.
So I went through a lot of struggling years with the fans and all, and it was tough for them because our team were terrible, but we just kept working and kept playing. But the fans came out, and I think this is a reward for them, for the Caps getting in the Stanley Cup. The fans have supported that team. It's been terrible for years, and they've been so close at times, and now they're there. The fan, it's unbelievable if you go down there. It's on the Rock and Red. It's unreal. It's just like Vegas has gone crazy, and Washington's really excited. And they're hungry. They're hungry for it. The fans are hungry for it. So hopefully they can do it.
That was back in the Capital Center days, right?
Yeah, Capital.
What, Landover, Maryland?
Landover, Maryland. Yeah, that was
so what is
dark
that,
building. Yeah, it was just.
Is that just outside of the city, or is that
it's just outside?
Almost
the
like
city,
saying you
like
play
Landover,
Etobicoke or something instead of Toronto.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's where it was.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, it's
so
again.
If you're saying a typical fan, I think it took them a while to, of course, learn the game when they first came in, and then it got to a point where they had no support. We had no support, and it was going to fold. I was the late Abe Poland who owned the team at that time, and so it was a real struggle. And I mean, I was sitting there with a jar, and I had pencils in it, 3 for a quarter. You know what I mean? And it was like I was just doing anything to get money so to keep the team. That's
awesome.
And so it was just, and that's the way. And so there you go. So it keeps building and building and building, and then of course, the draft pick, as we talked with Ovechkin 2004, the big trade that we had with Langley, and so the team's it's getting better and better and better, and their fans are getting more excited.
Sure.
And then they go against this Penguin team that they can't beat in the playoffs, and finally this year, they beat them. And then now they're in the final.
Because you guys always had the cool jerseys.
Yeah,
I mean, even with these throwback hats. Throwback hats.
Yeah, that's right.
I love those jerseys.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really happy for him. I hope it's a good series. I think it's great story about Vegas, and it's a great story about Washington. All the years, and it's about time Ovi gets his chance, and hopefully the whole team can back him and do well too.
Well, it's coming from the Dave Bastel side of the fence, he's like, it's not going to last. I mean, this clearly has to be a 1-year thing. This cannot happen 2 years in a row.
Every team that played Vegas this year, Dennis,
oh, you did.
I had the Kings.
Oh,
I had the
no.
Sharks.
Oh, yeah.
I had the Jets. And now I have the Capitals. Capitals winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's good.
What happens from this year to next year that tells you that this is not going to be the same? Even from a personnel standpoint.
Go ahead.
I got
my ideas.
I think that I think Vegas will continue on. I think they'll get more players, and I think they'll. I don't know if they're going to end up in the final next year, or even if they win it this year. I think it'll happen. The way they built their team and the way the game is today, it's speed. It's speed and finesse, and if they can continue getting more players, they're going to be okay. Could it happen next year? Sure it can. I mean, you look at, as we said earlier, I said that why is Vegas in and not the other teams? Why is Chicago not in? Why is, Pittsburgh not in? Why all these other teams? Why aren't they in the playoffs? Why is it Vegas, Washington? I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I coaching.
Well,
could be.
Gallant has done just a masterful job, and it's not often where you can truly play. And people say this all the time, us against the world. This is the card they want to play. It's us against the world. A lot of times when they do that, like LeBron said, no, I know it's us against the world. No, wait a minute. When you're the most dominant player of the decade, it's really hard to say it's us against the world because it's assumed that you're going to win all the time. But Vegas could. Because these guys were cast-offs. These, for the most part, these were average players. These guys weren't getting maybe a ton of ice time in their respective teams, and so they can look around that room. And I just don't know if, again, I try to make comparisons to where I've seen something similar. I just haven't. I never had for a team that never existed before. And then to do this it's like the Dirty Dozen. It really is, right?
Yeah, it's a team game, and I think that's what. Gallant has molded that whole system. The George McPhee too, of course, the GM, molded that team together as being a skating team game. Do your job. That's all you got. Real simple, and it's carried on. And then their goaltending. They've had great goaltending all year, not just in the playoffs. It's look at their start. I think they were 12-1 at one time, weren't they? And I go, wait a minute, here's this team at Vegas just. 12-1.
The start was freakish. We go, let's just wait.
And then they started playing against some as they started going on the road and start winning games on the road against some top teams. And there's kind of like, and as Gerald Gallant said, that it finally realized to me that we are a good team. We're beating teams that are number one teams in the league and all that. So it just continued on from there and then right to the end. And now in the playoffs. Stanley Cup.
So, Dave, next year, how do you see it?
James Neal moves on. I don't think James Neal is going to be re-signed by the team, so that's a big winger that was very good for them. William Karlsson's a restricted free agent, so there's going to be some significant cash considering that he scored 43 goals during the regular season. Then they have to kind of make some decisions because Nate Schmidt's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 1 year, so now's the chance to sign him. Just like in the offseason, Austin Matthews will get re-signed by the Maple Leafs and Patrick Laine by the Winnipeg Jets and so forth. And then also Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury is 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. I think he is kind of the poster child of the Vegas team. He is so loved, but he's also an aging goaltender.
Right.
He will sit there and demand maximum term, but will Vegas sit there and do it with their head or their heart? Because if you sign a Marc-Andre Fleury for a 6-year contract right now at this time, you might be kicking yourself in a couple of years. But he won you a Stanley Cup, or he got you to the Stanley Cup final, or whatever happens with this next 2 weeks. So there's definitely some decisions to be made. But I still don't see this team going as far as they did next year.
People are going, why is he so? Why does he not like? No, trust me, he loves Las Vegas. He does. He loves Las Vegas.
A phenomenal city. I still can't comprehend what's actually going on there.
Yeah, it's a zoo. I was down there last week in the golf tournament. And it's just crazy there about their hockey. It's unreal.
Are you on the tour? How much golf do you play?
That's what I asked him out there. I know.
No, it just happened in the last few weeks. Things have picked up about it. Yeah, no.
This is just a guess too. I bet you he's a bit of a sandbagger. I think he's going to go, oh, geez, I played a lot of hockey and my elbows and my knees. And I go, oh, maybe he's not that good. Okay, we'll give you these strokes. And then he goes out and he just starts hammering the ball.
And he dominates.
Just chipping it in and go, wait a minute. He goes, well, actually, I'm an 8 handicap or whatever. I go, oh, okay, of course you are.
That's right.
Yeah.
8 to 10.
8 to 10, yeah.
That's a sandbagger area. 8 to 10, you don't trust them, right?
Oh, well, as I said, this is a final that, and don't tell me you predicted it. I mean, please don't say, well, yeah, I had written down when. like a week ago. Like, I mean, if you did it a week ago, but at the beginning of the season. And I think of it's funny when you get to this point where we see the two best teams, the teams that have played the best. Let me put it that way. Yeah. Of the disappointments, gentlemen, I would say that I still look at what happened in Edmonton, and I just don't get it. I mean, they've got good hockey people in there. Todd McClellan, like as a coach, Peter Chiarelli certainly knows what he's doing. But what is the problem? What's the malfunction? What has to happen to get them out of this? Because they went so far south, Dave, that this year, like. To think that you thought maybe at one point, and maybe not this year, where you'd see a Toronto Edmonton final, which I think for Canadians that would be an amazing thing. Yeah. But the direction Edmonton went was just shockingly bad.
Yeah, it's really they had that one year, and Talbot was great. He won so many games, and they got McDavid scoring and Draisaitl. But who do they have after that? They don't have anybody. Yeah. If you look at their lineup now, who's really gonna fly, and then nobody can keep up to McDavid. He's so fast.
Right. But
and then does a one-on-one. He goes end to end. He tries to go end to end, and then everything drops off after that. After said he got hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And so he can. There was, and then all of a sudden Talbot's not
what he was the year before.
Yeah. And you have to. So there you go.
Adam Larson wasn't the same guy the year before.
Everything went south on the team. McDavid still did his thing in that, but
and then you look at what they have in the pipeline as far as like Milan Lucic doesn't look like he can play today's game.
Yeah, I agree.
No.
And he's on the books for another 6 years.
Ooh, amazing!
Amazing. And it's heavy cash. So
because no one's picking that.
I'm gonna go work out. So 6 months, man. My hands are still there, still scoring. I'm still scoring. No,
well, you know what?
62-year-old, 63-year-old guy coming back to play in the NHL would be pretty embarrassing.
Outside of the age, this is probably the better NHL for you, wouldn't it be? Considering that you don't have the 4 or 5 goons on every roster taking up spots. You have the smaller, skilled, fast players that score goals. I mean, this if you were Dennis Marouk, 21 years old right now, this would be like heyday for you.
And the clutching, the grab, that whole neutral zone stuff is all opened up.
Cross-checking, slashing, survival. That's what we had. But I mean, I would love to have been playing in today's game because it's pretty much wide open, and there's so many. The only difference is the goaltender.
Right.
And some of the rules have changed. The goaltenders have gotten bigger and covered more room. But the goal scorers are still scoring. Yeah. No matter how big the goalies are, they're still scoring. But that's kind of the way the game is today. It's finesse, it's skating.
Yeah.
It's 3-on-3. There's 5-on-3 power plays. We hardly had a 5-on-3.
Yeah,
very, very few. I think the referees were afraid to call another penalty.
And when you did, the Oilers would dominate, and then they changed it for the Edmonton Oilers,
right, exactly.
And they wouldn't allow that anymore, right, at that time.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this, because you bring up a good point. The goalies with bigger equipment or, bigger than they used to be and so forth, the nets are still the same. And we always hear about, should they increase the net size? Should they reduce the goal? I mean, goalies aren't going to get shorter. Every single goalie from here on in will be 6'4", 6'5", moving forward. Maybe in 20 years they might be 6'8". It just seems like they're turning into RoboCop type goaltenders. Is it time for the nets to be bigger?
I think they can make the post
thinner.
Make them thinner.
Yeah,
I think they can go to that, but otherwise, just leave it the way it is.
Yeah,
keep the equipment.
Sure.
In reason for them because they can extend their pads here, cover more room, jersey, and their pads look can be bigger. Keep it with a certain measurement or whatever size that. But to go real bigger, no, I don't think so. I think the nets are fine. Right. I think it's fine. It just the post maybe can be skinnier.
Yes.
Yeah, so that'd be it.
He's spoken like a goal scorer, not a goalie. What do you mean? It makes the post fatter, maybe a little bit.
Goalies want bigger equipment. They want to make the post thicker.
Yeah. Bring back the Garth Snow pads.
I don't know who's right and wrong in that, but that's the only way I would go about that if they're going to do anything. Yeah.
I think hockey at this moment, sort of in history. I think you can make an argument that hockey's never been played better around the world than it is right now. I mean, you can go overseas and you can look at some of these players and look, not everyone makes it to the NHL, but the guys who are in the show now are, they're all fast. They're all lean. Look, you went through years where not everyone came to camp in shape.
No, we came to camp.
You came to camp to get into shape.
I came to camp to get into shape.
Yeah.
Guys could barely bend over to tie their skates up, and and they're so wide. The laces were so wide, and but I was just that's what it was then. It was the guys today are just. Strong, fast, and it's a business today. I think it's, even though they love the game, but there's so much money in the game. It's just unreal.
Yeah. We're going to come back and we're going to get maybe some predictions on what's going to happen, but I want to stop off right now on rawmickrichards.com, either watching on the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. We appreciate all the subscriptions. Johnny Manziel still continues to get talk like I've never seen anything like for anybody in the CFL. And it still tends to be positive. Now, he's on the Dan Patrick Show. What I think is interesting is Dan did talk about the rules and how much you know about Canada and how much you know about the game itself. But he got to really sort of what the heart of the matter is. And I think it's interesting because I see it two ways. If I'm the journalist, and there's Dave Bastel, and I know his background, he's coming up and he's playing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And
good team.
And I'm thinking, okay, he said he signed a 2-year contract. I'm going to ask him. So you got to play for 2 years. Now, if you're Dave Bastel, you got to say the right things like, "Oh yeah, I'm committed to living here in Winnipeg, right? Mm-hmm. Winnipeg." And because I think if you're Johnny Manziel, you think he came up here to retire in the Canadian Football League? I find it hard to believe that that's really what the end goal is. So he's got to be not as honest maybe as he's supposed to. So how does he answer that question? Let's find out. Here's Dan Patrick.
And then you're committed to 2 years, so no matter how successful you are that first year, you can't go to the NFL. A team is interested in you. Is that correct?
That's essentially what it is, yes, sir.
How familiar are you with the Canadian Football League?
I started watching a little bit last year. I watched their championship game. I watched some of Hamilton's games last year. When you don't have a lot of time doing ball or anything like that, and you're just watching the NFL and you're watching college football and you're why not throw the CFL stuff on there if that's a possibility for where I was going to be? So, I watched last year. Getting up here, I feel like I've got some of the majority of the main rules down. And now the offense is just June Jones' system that he's run forever. And I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's a nice little offensive game plan we have here.
What is a bigger difference for you, the field being wider at 65 yards or the fact that there's going to be 12 players on defense?
I haven't got there yet. Right now, the thing you notice the most is the field being wider. Because when your trips are to the field, some of those throws to that outside Z or X are, definitely you definitely have to get on the majority of your throws and really let it fly. That's one thing. There is no really lobbing the ball around here because there's so much space. You really step into it and let it rip. And I think that fits my game style a little bit. And as far as the 12th, defender goes, it just looks different. It's not what I'm familiar to seeing as far as you come up and you look at your front from defense, look at where your backers are. Things are just a little bit off because there's that extra guy. But, at the end of the day, it's still ball. You're still throwing it into the windows. You're still throwing man routes. You're still throwing people open.
I thought it was a good and honest answer because you think about it, Dave. If your whole life, literally since you're 6 or 7 years old, what an out feels like, that muscle memory. You talk about being trips, right? So there are 3 receivers to one side, throwing that out. Well, that when you throw it out in the Canadian Football League, depending on the part of the field you're in, it could be a long throw.
30-yard pass.
Yeah.
So true. That's so true. And, it's a 30-yard pass to pick up 4 on an out pattern on the side.
And now it's 2nd and 6. What? I just threw a bomb. No, now I got picked up 4 yards.
And then you're not even including the drop back, too.
He's got one more down, right? So then
like it's just a different thing. No, I think the curiosity factor. So if you're looking at this, Dave, totals over under. He's not going to start.
Nope,
they're going to start Jeremiah Masoli.
Yeah.
But for the moment that he gets in, how many games, if he were to start, if he's going to be good, how many games does it take for him for you to judge that he's actually going to do something with this career up here in Canada?
8.
8
games. Yeah. Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I would know. I would know. But I mean, he may be Flutie, a Doug Flutie.
He's skill set.
Yeah, he's got the skills to do it. He's won Heisman. Didn't he win Heisman Trophy?
Yeah.
Right. So I know my football a little bit.
See, there you go.
But he's running into some bad luck off the field.
Well, that's
right,
well,
and
hey.
and we don't have to get into that, but I think, if he's honest and true about what he's saying, he could have a long career in Hamilton. Who knows? I mean, he may just all of a sudden this may be his thing, right here. We don't know till he gets out there and plays. But if he's got what he's saying is he wants to play in Hamilton, and if he's going to go out and perform, he's going to have to play his best. There's no doubt about it. He's going to have to be ready. Yeah.
What I thought was interesting, and you talk about if you're going to have difficulties off field or off ice, if that's not on the rails, then it's really hard to make the other thing work. But the clip we saw was Skip Bayless, where he said, from a football standpoint, yeah, I'm cheering for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could be good enough to get back, but I can no longer trust him as a person. Mm-hmm. And so in order for the whole world who's watching that aspect of his life, only time will tell.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what you're talking about, being honest with yourself.
Yeah, you gotta do it. He's done it before. He's done it in college football. I mean, he's been successful. Was successful there. So now you get at the pro level. What was it? Because of the money changed his whole outlook. What he could do more things off the field and with the money, and I think now it comes down to himself. He's got to be true to himself. What he's saying. He wants to play football again. He wants to be there, and now he has to go do it.
Okay, if we're looking at the finals here, Stanley Cup. The Washington Capitals, the Vegas Golden Knights.
Ooh.
So let's start with, I don't know how this is going to go, but it is a former Capital. How do you see this series, and what do you think it's going to look like?
Okay. You've got two different teams. You got speed in both teams, but I think Washington has the maturity side. As we said earlier, both goalies are playing great. Washington has more scoring. More balanced scoring, not only because of Ovi scoring and Knutson, they've got other guys scoring too, where Vegas doesn't have as much scoring. Defensive, if you look at their defense, I think that Washington has to have the edge there as well. And Vegas is a team that's all those guys have molded together and played well. And for them to beat Washington, it's got to be the goalie. Andre Fleury's got to just dominate like he did against Winnipeg for Vegas to beat Washington. Right now, I think Washington has the edge of what they've done in the last few games, and the whole team is playing great.
So what does it look like?
Series?
Yeah. Come on.
I'd say 5 games.
Holy smokes!
Oh my God!
Wow. Okay.
Washington 5 games.
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think they're a dominating team. I think they've got all these guys are going. Sorry about Vegas, but I'm just because I'm a Capital fan. I look at both teams, and I just look at their team as just got that physical edge on them. Yeah,
okay,
maturity.
Well,
there you go.
I didn't see the 5 games coming, but Dave, how does this look for you?
I agree with everything Dennis was saying. I think when you break down position by position, and it's only a slight edge. The only edge I see Vegas has right now over Washington is in goal, and it's not much. I'm just saying, based on the 2 resumes so far in the last 2 months of the playoffs, Marc-Andre Fleury has been the best player on the ice on any team of the 16 teams that were in this tournament to begin with. Braden Holtby is not much of a drop back compared to the 2, but that's the only position that's better. It's the most important position. Therefore, I have the Capitals winning, but the Capitals winning in 6 games. In 6 games.
There you go.
There you go.
How about you, Mike?
Oh,
okay.
I hate betting against Vegas. I'm like, every time I do it, we've learned a really hard lesson. To me, it will be even though 1 game. So the first game, guys who've played the sport long enough and certainly at that level have a certain feel for what certain games mean. But to me, if there is going to be a change in the wind or whatever, and that is, does pace and youth, does it outmatch maturity and a physicality? And I think with Marc-Andre Fleury in goal, I don't know. So here's what I'm going to say. Vegas in 7.
Oh, boy.
Vegas in 7. So
Wow.
see, what the problem is now? Got to give the hat back. You're going to give me that hat.
No,
you
can't. Take it off.
No, I think it's great for both teams. If Vegas wins, it's a great story.
Yes.
If Washington, it's another great story. because of they've never won it. It waited so long. It's great for the hockey, but there'd be some great stories going on. But I still got to go to the Caps. So I really do. Yeah. I got it. It's in my heart. I have to. I pretty much have to.
Well, they'll take those tickets back.
Yeah.
You think that section was bad? You should see the next section we got for you.
Yeah.
My friend, thanks so much for coming.
My
in.
pleasure.
It's always so awesome when you come in here.
You.
Just awesome.
Dennis, always good seeing you.
Appreciate it. Just that was a great morning as always. Whoa. There's an extra song in here somewhere.
You want to go do karate
There
in
you
the
go.
garage?
Yeah. Extra karate.
It's time!
Well, there you have it. And the predictions. Dennis Marouk says Caps in 5. That's Dave says Caps in 6, and I say Vegas in 7.
And Russell says he wants to fight the DJ that works here on Sundays.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah.
Yeah, way to go, numbnuts. So, Russell, even though you don't have the, what do you say? What is your... Vegas in 7. Yeah. There's another guy who's losing a hat. Thanks for joining us here this morning. For those of you watching in Calgary, you will hear me today at 2 p.m. with Rob Kerr, your time, as we talk about something new for us. Yeah, I just dropped that. See you later.